Hello, bonjour, my name is Alexander Martin and today I'm going to be sharing with you a complete guide to selling Parisian property. We're going to be looking at top tips, local knowledge, strategies in order for you to sell your property in the best possible manner, of course, at the highest price. The first thing to do is a valuation of the property. In Paris, in France, data is very opaque. The transparency isn't the same as in the US. So this is actually quite a difficult exercise. Whether you decide to sell on your own or with an agency, I would absolutely recommend getting a couple of agencies, a couple of professionals through your property to value it. Now, they will usually do this free of charge, so no strings attached. And it's really, really important to get multiple opinions, to get a solid price range for the value of your apartment in the current market. At the same time as getting the agencies through, look at the data yourself. Again, it's not that transparent, it's not that available, but it is improving, and there are a couple of tips that I can share with you. The first is the online estimation tools. So there are companies such as meilleursagents.com, which will provide a simulator, can give you a decent ballpark price range. The most real data, however, is the government's data. So this is from the Land Registry, and you can access this on your French tax portal by going to other services, search for real estate transactions, and then you look at the address, you look at a range of size. I recommend going 10 or 15 meters squared either side of your property and look at past transactions, say over the last 12 months. This will give you a really good idea of the recent transactions in your area for properties of a comparable size. However, please be aware that you don't know the condition or the layout of the property. You won't see any images. The only supplementary information that you'll have is whether there's an elevator or not. Of course, this can make a difference to pricing, but remember, it's really, really useful data. Also, remember that if you get an estimation from, say, 6 months or 1 year, make sure you refresh it when you're coming to sale. What affects a valuation? Remember, these valuations are objective, so don't take it personally. The things that are going to affect the valuation are precise location. Is it on a busy street or a quiet street? Floor level, condition of the apartment, what renovation works are there. The quality of the floor plan, load-bearing walls or not, may vastly differ the quality of a floor plan for a certain size apartment, which can then fit for different demographics, couples, families, depending on the layout. Other things to look for, of course, are light, which has been something incredibly important since the pandemic and the working from home culture that has been instilled in today's society. And also building works. So is there any major works coming up in the building? What condition is the building in? Is it a beautiful building? Is it a modern building? It is an old building. Generally, there's a premium on the older buildings for that Parisian charm. All these factors are going to affect the valuation. Try and think about it objectively. Think about the clientele, maximizing the amount of buyers. Who are you targeting? Who is your property for? And again, try and keep this as objective as possible, which is also where agencies will be very useful to you. So you have worked out the expected market value for a sale of your property. The question now is how much is going to go into your pocket? How much you can expect after you've taken away any mortgage repayments and any taxes. We did another video on taxation on property, which you can check out just here. But the key things, the key factors that are going to influence how much tax you pay are, of course, if there is any capital gain, whether it's your primary or secondary residence, whether you've done any renovation works, and how long you've held the property. So you typically start to get tax breaks after 5 or 6 years, but please, please, please ensure to check this with an accountant, with a notaire. This is not financial advice, these are guidelines. So please make sure you do your research about your liabilities before acting any sale. One final bit of advice: when you are calculating your sale price after taxes, please, please, please use the lower end of the market value range. Then there will be only good surprises. You've worked out the market value of your property. You've worked out how much will go back into your pocket. Now it is time to prepare the papers needed for the sale of your property. I cannot stress how important this is to do before you put the apartment up for sale, even actually before you decide on a final valuation. Why? Because although there is this temptation to go as quickly as possible to say that you will deal with the papers later, they can have an effect. There can be surprises, both good and bad, and the amount of times that I have seen properties come to sale acts and then there be surprises which lead to downward price negotiation, which could have been avoided, or even the deal falling through. Really get this done before. Of course, if you choose to list with an agency, any half-decent professional will ensure that you have the full file, the full papers ready before going to market or even deciding on a price. We're not all perfectly organized, of course, but it's really important to assemble both the papers concerning directly your apartment, but also the building, the co-ownership or the HOA, if you like. Getting this all together, it takes time, it takes energy. It is absolutely in your best interests to get it done before deciding on any sales strategy, and ultimately you will need it to close any deal, so just get it done with. So, what are these papers that are needed? Now, they are split into two parts. Firstly, there are the papers relative to the apartment itself, and secondly, there are the papers relative to the building, management, and the co-ownership. So, for the apartment, first and foremost, your title deed. Dig it out wherever it is. These days, it's mostly electronic as well. Good news, but this is of course essential information to prove that you are the owner of the property, and this of course will be checked later on by their notaire, but get it done early. Other information important is to get the invoice for the annual property tax or the taxe foncière. This is important information for a buyer when they're establishing a budget, although in Paris they are pretty low, about 0.1% of the property value. Secondly, you need the apartment diagnostics. So these, I guess, are the equivalent of an inspector's report in the US, and that is an inspection of the interior of the property and the cellar. Bear in mind, depending on the size of the apartment, these diagnostics will probably cost 250 to 400 euros to get done. You need them for the sale, so get them done as soon as possible. Sometimes agencies will offer them as a free gift if you sign up to sell with them. So bear that in mind as well. That can be a useful negotiating point. There are 7 different metrics which the diagnostics company will measure. 1, the condition of the electrical installation. 2, the condition of the gas installation, if there is one. Number 3, are there any termites in the apartment? Or, more importantly, the cellar, as that can often be where they're shown up. Remember, a lot of these buildings, especially the older buildings, do have these wooden beams, wonderful charm, but now and again can be home to bugs. Number 4, asbestos. Now this is a pretty serious one. You won't usually see it in buildings before 1950s, 60s, 70s, but really it's a subject which is extremely important and a huge red flag to any buyer. So if this comes up, make sure you get it dealt with as soon as possible. Number 5, is there any presence of lead? Now this is usually found in the paint. Back in the day, there used to be lead in paints, and sometimes it will be found in the layers of paint behind, which have been added year after year. It's not generally something to worry about, but it does need signaling. And also, if the buyer is going to do any work, they will need to signal this to their contractors. It's a legal obligation. One area you will generally find paint is on the window protection railings. Now these are actually just outside the building. The lead is in those kind of paints because it's actually typically a lot more resistant, so used outside, but not a danger, not something to worry about. Now 6 is the energy performance rating. This is an indicator from A to G on how energy efficient your property is. If it's an older property, now it will generally be in the lower E, F, G, and this will give the buyer an idea of any improvements that can be made to improve the energy efficiency. 7th and most important metric is the brokerages, or the surface area. In Paris, there's very much a fixation on price per square meter. So it's really, really important. 2 meters squared can mean a difference of 10, 20,000 euros, even more. It's really important, again, to get this done before going to sale, because even though you may have bought an apartment of a certain size 10, 15 years ago, there weren't the same regulations then. The measurement can actually vary, sometimes quite dramatically, from when you bought to when you sold. Just a quick word on the surface area of an apartment. It is split into two numbers. So there's what we call the surface au sol, which is the total surface area of the apartment. And then the most important, the loyer-carrés. The loyer-carrés is the surface area excluding any balconies, any parts of the apartment under 1.8 meters. So typically on a top floor where you have slanted roofs, you'll see quite a lot of hors carrés, outside carrés measuring. Also any area either in doorways, underneath doorways, sometimes with those big load-bearing walls, that can be a certain surface area. And then the bit in between the edge of the room and the window. We call that the embrasure in French, although in English, I have to say, absolutely no idea. Sometimes, as an example, you can have an apartment maybe with a balcony on a high floor with a little bit of sloped roof, which will have, say, a surface area measurement of 70 meters squared and a loyer-carrés measurement of maybe 65. And that, of course, can make a difference to pricing as you need to decide how you're going to weight those extra 5 meters squared. So now for the building papers. You're going to need two things, an invoice of the quarterly charges, the latest one, and you're also going to need the last 3 years' minutes from the annual general meeting. What is this going to show a buyer? Now, this is going to show a buyer, first of all, is the co-ownership functioning? Do they get things done? Do they make decisions? But most importantly, it's going to show a buyer any major works that have been voted on, that have been discussed, or that have been undertaken. So these are really, really important points for a buyer because it makes a big difference to the budget. We're not always on top of the annual general meetings. Now they're extremely long, you may not go to them, but before fixing a price for your property, please make sure to check what has been happening, what is upcoming, and any potential costs that may be incurred for the unit. Remember that the person who votes for something, so the current owner of an apartment at the time of an annual general meeting, is the person that is liable to pay for it. So this actually can have quite a big difference, particularly when it comes to major renovation costs, such as cleaning of a facade, renovation of a roof, even repainting the communal areas, and of course, any structural questions. So it's really important to be on top of this because this can be 10, 20,000 euro bills, which could be coming your way. So really important to take that into account when pricing, and conversely as well, something to really put forward as a commercial argument if lots of works have been undertaken. So that's a quick summary on the annual general meeting minutes and the importance of understanding on what's going on in terms of the building's general management and larger projects. However, just as important, even though on a smaller scale, are the quarterly invoices or charges de copropriété, as we call them. This is obviously something very important to a buyer when they're budgeting, and also can vary quite a lot between two properties of the same size. Now, why can this vary? It can depend on a multitude of factors. The size of a co-ownership, fixed costs will be diluted if there are a larger number of units in the building. Also, what's included? Is there a concierge? Is there an elevator? Is there a central heating system? Is the water individual or communal? So lots of different factors which can sometimes vary from single to triple the cost. So really important to understand this and to transmit this information to a buyer before they make any offer. And again, to know it before you start any pricing. These are the key documents that you need to assemble: ownership, diagnostics, building works, and building charges. Really, really important. Get these together, understand them, analyze them before fixing a sale price. And of course, an agency will help you with this. Nobody likes a surprise in a real estate deal. Step 4, preparing the apartment for sale. Now, your papers are of course perfectly in order. And although you may not have decided whether you want to list yourself or with an agency, you need to prepare the apartment for sale, before you take photos, before you make a video, and of course, before you start sharing it, so that it is presented in the best possible light to reduce the amount of negotiation and increase your sale price. But what does this entail? 3 key steps. Number 1, declutter the apartment. You want the apartment to feel as spacious and as large as possible. You don't want people trying to step around stuff, understand spaces. You want people to focus on the intrinsic qualities of the property. So really important, get as much excess stuff out of the apartment. Number 2, depersonalize. Now, I know this bit can be tricky, but it's really important to remove any personal effects. This can be family, personal photos, religious, political memorabilia. The key here is that you want the buyer to not feel like they're in your home, but to feel like they're in their home. 3, clean the apartment. If you were selling your car, you'd wash it, right? The amount of people who don't clean an apartment is staggering to me sometimes. But even an apartment, if it's to be fully renovated, cleaning the windows can add to the light, 10, 20, 30% increase in light. So really, really important to do this. And also to make the viewing experience as pleasant as possible for any prospective buyer. These 3 steps are really the bare minimum that you should be doing before selling a property. There is one more step, which is home staging, and particularly if the property is empty, it's really great to get a home stager in who will not only depersonalize the apartment, they will also put in furniture, decorate, and while they have impeccable taste, their real key strength is helping prospective buyers from an objective point of view understand spaces and possible layouts. It can really make the difference hiring a home stager. They will come, they will decorate your apartment, they will lend you the furniture for the duration of a sale, usually 3-4 months, at a very reasonable cost, and it can really make all the difference when getting prospective buyers to fall in love with your apartment. Have you ever noticed how much bigger a furnished apartment feels than an empty one? Of course, if you list with an agent, they will advise you on optimum presentation for today's market, today's buyers. If you choose to do it yourself, do you get any friends that you may have, interior designers, for example, to give their opinion? And again, really try and keep it as objective and neutral as possible. This isn't about you, this is about the buyer. So, it's time to list your property, and you have 2 options here. Do it yourself, and the second is to hire a professional or an agency to mandate them to be in charge of the sale. If you do choose to list yourself, I highly recommend that you still get the photos done by a professional. For around 100 euros, you can get a dozen or so photos professionally done, which are going to make all the difference. Whatever you do, do not take the photos yourself. Let's be completely honest here. Unless you're a professional photographer, the photos are probably not going to be any good at all, and they are not going to paint your property in its best light, not going to show its potential, not going to attract the buyers to come through the door. Now, how are you going to get these buyers through the door? There is no MLS, multiple listing service, in Paris, and the major sites such as Se Loger, Figaro, Bien Ici are reserved mainly for professionals, so you have several options for marketing your property and getting the word out. Now, you can use your social media channels, put up the advert there, tell your friends, tell your family, spread the word. There are also various peer-to-peer sales sites such as Le Bon Coin and PRP, and also Gens de Confiance, where individuals will get together and you can post your listing, much like a Craigslist, and get the maximum amount of visibility from that. Just a quick word of warning here, it's not only individuals that go onto these sites, you will also be inundated by phone calls from brokers who are calling you up, trying to get your listing, claiming they have the client and getting you to sign a sale mandate. A lot of phone calls, you have been warned. Now it's time to start the viewings. The key thing here is leave your emotions at the door. You want to be objective here. A buyer is coming to your home, they'll be conscious of that, but they may have very different tastes to you. So please, please, please don't be offended if your purple walls aren't their cup of tea. Another key point, keep the viewings simple. Show them the main qualities, talk about the strengths of the property, of the location, add value. They don't need to know that you have a double drawer for different recycling bins, okay? Keep it simple. Overall, don't get dragged into too much detail unless they ask. However, the final takeaway from doing the visits is, remember, although it's completely normal to be emotionally attached, this isn't you selling your home, this is the buyer buying their new home. If you are lucky enough to get an offer for your apartment, it is then into negotiations, and it is down to you to negotiate directly with the buyer. Negotiations. So you've received an offer either directly from a buyer or through an agency. If it's not at asking price, you may want to negotiate the price or the conditions. Now, there are two types of offer that a buyer can make. One is dependent on a loan, so a loan conditional clause. One is a cash offer or not dependent on a loan. If a buyer makes an offer with a loan conditional clause, that means they are relying on the financing to make the purchase of the apartment. If a buyer makes an offer without a loan conditional clause or a cash offer, then they are not relying on financing to secure the apartment, to purchase the apartment. So obviously this is a much stronger proposition and should always be privileged, sometimes even when a slightly lower amount in a difficult market. Other points that need to be kept in mind during negotiations. So what future building work is coming up or likely to come up, particularly if in those 3 years annual general meeting minutes there have been quotes for building work that needs to be taken into account. And also furniture. You know, it may suit you, it may suit the buyer to leave certain bits of furniture. They may want bits of furniture because your taste is so great. So this can be included in a sale and often tip the balance one way or another. If you decide that you want to be accompanied by a professional for the sale of your property, then you will mandate an agency. What is their role? So they have several roles. It's really about accompanying you from the start of the process right through to the closing. And this goes from advising on the preparation of the apartment, taking photos, making video about the apartment, really, really important these days. Establishing a marketing strategy. So how and where is your property going to be presented? Is it going to be off-market, to client databases? What's the social media strategy? All these sorts of things, when, where, how, really important questions which can increase the attractiveness, increase the traction on your property and really achieve you the best possible price. They will then be organising and scheduling visits, and then of course doing these visits, selling your property. I mean, these are professional salespeople and they will be highlighting the strengths of your property, trying to get you the best possible price. Upon receiving any offers for the apartment, they will then be in charge of any negotiations. They will be the first point of contact between the buyer and yourself. Again, professional negotiators will be trying to get the maximum for you as their client. Another little bonus of using an agency is that they have a real network of trusted partners which can help you throughout all stages of the transaction, whether it's preparing the apartment before sale with a home stager, whether it comes to moving, financing, choice of notaries. There are all sorts of different people out there and they will be able to recommend you the best possible partners. Last but not least, the role of an agent is to advise you on pricing. Now, whether it's also with the valuation and the list price, and then further down the road, you know, sometimes things don't sell as anticipated, market conditions can change, and agents are on this 24/7, so can give you really good feedback about pricing and strategy moving forward if the apartment doesn't sell straight away. So that is the role and the work of an agency, but which one do you choose and what kind of sale mandate do you sign with them? So first and foremost, what are the different types of sale contract? Now, there are two types of sale contract. There is an exclusive and a non-exclusive sale contract. Both have advantages and inconveniences. For a non-exclusive contract, you will be giving the sale to two, I recommend maximum 3 different brokerages. The idea in them competing against each other, injecting this sense of competition and exposing your property to multiple different client bases. Now, do bear in mind that they will also be publishing on the different internet sites, so you do need to be a little bit careful about your property gaining overexposure, because that can be considered as seeing that there is something wrong with it, reason that it isn't selling, that it's everywhere. So do keep that in mind, but you can increase the competition for a broker to sell. The second option is an exclusive listing, which is one we would always recommend. And this is where you give your sale mandate to one sole brokerage. The downside, of course, is you're relying on one professional to perform, but hopefully you've done enough due diligence and research on the different agencies beforehand that you're comfortable with your choice. The upside is that when you give your apartment to one sole brokerage, it doesn't become about competing with other brokerages to get a sale. It becomes about obtaining you, client, the highest possible price. So there isn't this temptation to go quicker. It's more about being stronger and more powerful in terms of the client's best interests. Furthermore, if you give an exclusive listing to a brokerage, they're going to be more motivated because they know that there is a higher chance of them getting paid. Ultimately, they're only paid on sale. So they'll invest a lot more time and money in an exclusive listing compared to a non-exclusive listing. Final advantage is that it is one person controlling all the different offers, interests, feedback on their property, so it gives you really, really good visibility and allows them to execute in the best possible manner for you as their client. Which brokerage do you choose? Now, there are over 400 different brokerages in Paris, each with multiple agents, and I think the key thing here is to go with someone that you trust, ideally someone that's recommended to you, someone that you feel comfortable with. They're looking after your most important asset, your prized possession usually, which is your home. In terms of the different brokerages, they will all charge between 2 and 5% in terms of commissions. In terms of the different brokerages, so what have you got? So you've got global or national franchises, agencies with multiple offices in Paris, small neighborhood brokerages, you have digital agencies, you have all different types of offer, all different types of propositions. The most important thing is understanding the differences between them. Some have larger databases, some have different processes. You may feel that some take more care of you, some have higher quality marketing. Again, it's really about meeting a few of these people, and I think the most important thing is to go on recommendations and then having conversations with different professionals. In terms of pricing, they will typically charge between 3 and 5% of the sale price for their services. Can be negotiated even before signing a sale mandate, sometimes during any negotiations when an offer's on a property, but just bear that in mind. And yeah, talk to different people and go for recommendations. Congratulations, you have achieved your sale price. An offer has been accepted, countersigned, and you are ready to draw up the sale contracts. However, it's not you that draws up the sale contract, it's the notaire. So a notaire is a hybrid role. Technically a public official, but they also have their own offices or études. And of course, the quality, speed, reactivity, thoroughness can vary very differently from one professional to another. So really key point here, make sure you get a recommendation of a good quality notaire, because they are the ones that will be doing all the due diligence for the sale. They will be defending your interests. It is very important that each party has their own notaire, buyer and seller. Although sometimes this isn't the case, we'd always recommend having your own representation. Last but not least, the sale contracts. So the notaire will be drawing up the sale contracts, which is split into two parts, the Promesse de Vente or reservation contract, and the final closing sale contract or Acte de Vente. Now, Promesse de Vente is the most important contract in French law. This draws up all the terms. It takes 3 to 4 weeks to prepare, so a little bit of patience. The notaire will be gathering all the documents on history, on the building, on the apartment, on the building management company, lots of different papers to get together, to analyze, to draw up the most secure possible sale contract. By the time you get to signing this contract, most of the negotiations have been done. It's really about deciding on any closing dates and any minor points which might have turned up in the due diligence. When this sale contract is signed, the buyer puts down 5% of the amount of the total property price into a notary escrow account. So neither buyer nor seller can touch this money. Although please be aware that if they withdraw from the sale without any conditions such as the loan conditional clause, then they are liable for 10% of the sale price in case of withdrawal. Finally, final closing or the Acte de Vente. So this is really a formality. It happens 2 to 3 months after the signing of the reservation contract. This time is usually down to either the bank and the buyer obtaining their loan, but also sometimes the City Hall has first refusal for 2 months on a property, although this is extremely rare. Now, just before this final closing, you do a final walkthrough of the property with the buyer or agent if you've used one. Make sure that everything's clear, including the seller. Do not forget the seller. Make sure that any appliances are still in the apartment that have been agreed, any furniture, there's no water damage. Read the meetings, and then you're off to the notaire's office for the final signing. Hand over the keys, open the champagne, and in 24 hours, the money will be in your account. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope this has been a useful guide to selling a property in Paris. We've gone over all the options, we've gone over the different scenarios, the advantages, the inconveniences, what you can expect, a few key tips, top tips, real strategies to help you maximize the sale in terms of as smooth as possible and of course the best price possible for your property. Now, if you would like any further information or if you have any questions, please pop it in the comments below. And of course, thank you for watching. Always appreciate if you like, if you subscribe to our channel as well. Thank you so much for watching. Merci beaucoup. À bientôt. Au revoir.